So we're in the origin story of Moshiach, and we mentioned yesterday an amazing reality that the Torah says that you're not allowed to marry a Moabite. But the Gemara explains that it's Moya v'loy Moyabiyah, which means the prohibition was on the men, but it was not on the females. Moyav, you're not allowed to marry Moyav, but Moyabiyah, you're yes allowed to marry. That's the drasha. And that was the accepted halacha for all those years, including, like we mentioned, Boaz, which means anyone from Moyav and onwards. And when Ruth married in, she was a Moabite princess. So Boaz, the psak was that it was mutter because she was a Moyabiyah, and then Oived and Yishai's first and older children. But when it came to King David, shalom. When it came to King David, so the psak flipped. The psak flipped that it was Moya v'gam Moyabiyah, which means a Moabite and a female, which means that now Yishai was afraid to stay with his wife because he was really invalid, and he separated from his wife. He took a maidservant, and before that, when King David was 28, like we mentioned, we ended with this yesterday, when he was 28 and he fought Goliath, who was the prophet at that time? Who was the greatest rabbi at that time? Anybody know? It was Samuel. Yeah, Shmuel. That was the time of the prophet Shmuel. Shmuel was the Gadol Ador. He was the most righteous of the generation. Like we say, Moshe v'Aaron l'Koyanav u'Shmuel l'Koyrei Shmoi, that Moshe and Aaron were equal together to the level of Shmuel. Shmuel was one of the greatest Jews that ever lived. And Samuel, the prophet Shmuel, decided on that day that he fought Goliath that the psak was that it was Moyav v'loy Moyabiyah, and that he restored the psak and ended it for all eternity, that it's only Moyav and not Moyabiyah, and therefore the end of the story was that King David was valid. King David was valid, he was born under valid conditions, and therefore, and only at that point did the family welcome him into the Kahal, into the family, into the tribe of Israel. But for 28 years, they made fun of him. You're an invalid, you were born under questionable status, and you can't even be part of the Jewish people. So King David was born into that pressure, into that darkness. Now let's go back to the conception of King David. And this is something that's very, very deep. This is for mature audiences. So like we mentioned, that Yishai separated from his wife. He was concerned with the new psak of Moya v'loy Moyabiyah, and he took a maidservant. And the difference between a maidservant and a wife, like the Gemara says, is a wife is taken with ksuba, and a maidservant is taken without a ksuba. So he took a maidservant. One night, Jessie, Yishai's real wife, that he had separated from, wanted to be with her husband. But the problem was that Yishai had a maidservant. So Yishai's wife went to the maidservant and said, tonight I want to go into Jesse. I want to go into Yishai in your place. It seems we've seen this a few times in the Torah of switching around, like we're going to see also with Rachel and Leah. But this was a switcheroo. And she said that I want to go in, and in the darkness of the night, she went in. So Yishai thought that he was going to be with the maidservant, but in the cover of darkness, really Yishai was together with his wife, but he thought that he was being intimate with the maidservant, which means he thought that the woman that he was with was another woman. So the Gemara in the Dharam Daf Chaf, you can look this up, in Shulchan Aruch Reish Mem Sif Beis, speaks about that there's a number of different intimate relationships that if the husband, and we'll talk about this more in Tanya in the second parak, if the husband doesn't have the right intentions during that time, then it makes a lot of results for the status of the child spiritually. It talks about if a husband wants to divorce his wife, but he's still being with her. It talks about if he hates her. It talks about if he's thinking about another woman, even though he knows who it is. It talks about if he doesn't know who it is, he's thinking about somebody else and thinks that she's somebody else. And all of these things lead to influences in the child. So Yishai seemingly thought about a totally different person, which is called B'nai Temura, children that come from a relationship of an exchange, i.e., he's thinking that this is one woman, but really she flipped and exchanged herself for somebody else. Or he thought that what was happening was he was with a particular person, and that was flipped. And the child is called B'nai Temura, an exchanged soul. And that night that he was with his wife, thinking that it was the maidservant, that conception was King David. So King David is coming out of a very questionable conception from Peretz, who is coming from Tamar and Yehuda, from Rus, who's all sorts of questions of her marrying in, and Moav Oleh Me'abia, and coming from Lot and an incestuous relationship. The who of King David is filled with all sorts of very challenging and very difficult ideas to make peace with. And we're going to see this is the entire narrative, the true Torah narrative of King David, especially the Messiah of David, Moshiach ben David, is that through the filth comes the light. Through the darkest places, and what this really is going to mean to us as we continue to understand who King David is that he's the one that's going to reveal that amongst and from the darkness comes the greatest light. You only have light that emerges out of darkness. Like everybody knows, we mention all the time, like if I just take a lighter out right now and light it on fire, it's not so impressive. It probably just looks weird. But if we're in the middle of a pitch dark cave and you take that same lighter and you light that light, the light is greater, the light is brighter. So Moshiach is going to be the one that's going to reveal Hashem's oneness from the darkness. He's going to reveal that even that darkness of your life where you felt that Hashem was totally pushed away, you felt that Hashem was totally far from you, you felt that Hashem didn't exist on that university campus, and that relationship that didn't work out, and that job didn't work out, all those problems, Mashiach is going to come and show you that he was there every step of the way, and that's going to be a much greater revelation than just Hashem that exists inside of the synagogues of the world. So the whole beginnings, the whole origin of King David is very dark and very murky and very challenging, and we'll see a lot of that has to do with the Mashiach that comes out of Leah, and we're going to compare and contrast that Mashiach that comes out of the children of Leah, which of course is from Yehuda, and that Mashiach that comes out of Rachel, which is called the Mashiach of Joseph. Now, in order to understand the origin story of Mashiach, we also cannot leave out the first man in humanity, because he plays a very large role in this. And by the first man of humanity, I don't mean a monkey, because that's not where we come from. What I mean is Adam. Adam, the Sfarim explain, was a prophet. He learned Torah from Hashem. He was created in the Yotzer Kapov. Hashem's very hands fashioned Adam. And Adam saw prophetically that King David was not going to live. That King David is essentially going to be a stillborn. He was not to have any life. Now we're going to explain more what that means, because King David is an embodiment of the spiritual concept called God's Malchus, one of the Sfirot, the spheres of Hashem. The way Hashem runs and creates the world is called Malchus, the 10 spheres. One is called Malchus, kingship. that sphere really has no life to itself. It's just a vessel that receives all the other energies. It's just a holding. That's why the Zohar says, Leis Megar Meklum, there's nothing to it, there's nothing there. King David was that. He wasn't supposed to even have any life. He wasn't even supposed to live. So Adam saw prophetically that he was supposed to not exist. How many years did Adam live for? How many years was Adam supposed to live for, excuse me? Adam was supposed to live for 1,000 years. Talk about longevity. It's good stuff, right? We'll do another show on longevity another time. But we'll have to learn from Adam. He was supposed to live 1,000, so he had a short life. For you know how many years he actually did live? 930 years. How many years did King David live? 70 years. Adam was supposed to live 1,000 years. Adam gave King David, he saw that he was going to not exist. He was destined to be dead. Adam gives King David 70 years of his life, essentially extending and giving Moshiach, giving King David his life, thereby connecting him very deeply to King David, because he wouldn't have had any life had it not been for Adam. Gives those 70 years to David, and David lives for 70 years. Ayin Shanim, the 70 years. Ayin is the gematria of soid, of secret. The same meaning. Ayin means spring. And that's why Adam, who's completely wrapped into the Messianic story, as he gave David, who is the Mashiach, he gave him those years. That's why Adam, like the Sfarim point out, Adam is Aleph Daled man. So Adam is the acronym. That's of course Adam. This is David. This is Moshiach. So inside of Adam is himself, is King David, and is Moshiach. Inside of Adam. Now Adam, if he would have not have eaten from the Eitz Hadas Tov, he would have perfected the world. He would have eaten from the Eitz HaChaim. That would have been the end of the story, and everything would have been. We would have built the Beis HaMikdash, and we would have gone immediately into the Messianic era. That did not happen, and Plan B occurred, where Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, and the world got spun into a state of a dizzying combobulation of good and evil being mixed together, confusion of hate, of challenge, difficulty of people actually having to work and not seeing God revealed to them in their life. That could have been fixed by David. He had the opportunity to tilt the world back to the side of light. One of the ways he would have done that was to marry Bathsheba, but he had to wait for her. He married her too prematurely. The Sfarim say that Bathsheba, the Arizal, Bathsheba was a reincarnation of Eve, and David was a reincarnation, as we're explaining, of Adam. The soul himself is Adam. He wasn't able to make that fixing. He married Bathsheba too early. The story there of David and Bathsheba, and therefore only Moshiach is going to completely fix the story and finish the entire unfolding. The main job of Moshiach we'll talk about later. We talk about really what his job profile is. But one of the main points is that he has to separate good and evil. He has to pull out and systematically remove the evil, see it as it is, and then he's going to show us that even in the evil, God was there also.
How would the marriage fix it?
He had to be able to come together in that perfect unity with Bathsheba, and we'll have to speak about that another time. David HaMelech went through endless insults. His family, His family mutiny. His son wanted to kill him. People made fun of him. He was a redhead. The verses speak about him. He was exceptionally handsome. He was ruddy. I think they say he was rugged, ruddy, red-haired. And we'll talk more about David HaMelech's eyes and the eyes of Moshiach. But it says about King David's eyes that all the colors of the world were twinkling inside of his eyes. It's a very beautiful visual of what David's eyes looked like. Many people have blue eyes, or green eyes, or brown eyes. David HaMelech had all the colors of the world twinkling, sparkling in his eyes. We'll talk what that means also. That he, like the Melech, Malchus means he was able to contain all of the energy. He had all the colors inside of his eyes. David HaMelech, like it says in Tehillim, Kedai to look this up, 89, verses 51 and 52, that they've insulted you, all of the negativity towards King David. And one thing you see about King David, he writes about everything. If you open up the Psalms, he's so real, he's so human. He feels deeply. There's something which is a great proof to somebody's authenticity is when you talk to them, when you speak to them, when you read their books, it's very human. There's a lot of books out there that you read them and they seem not human. They seem maybe just a script, a narrative. They seem like they're just writing an agenda. And then you read other books that are you speak to me after class for exact details of some of those books. But some that are more human. You feel the human being coming across and sharing their plight of what they've seen, of what's going on in the world, and the falsehoods they've seen, and the truths they've seen. King David was a true leader. And we're going to learn more about the who of King David, about the who of Moshiach. Moshiach is a man of never-ending opposition. Sounds like somebody I know nowadays. Endless opposition towards them. Familial rejection, like we mentioned, completely thought of as invalid, rejected by the family. He took a solitary stand against Goliath. The only one that would, bless you, would stand up to the giant Goliath. He was a little boy, but he was little. He was younger, 28. He wasn't a boy, but he was small. He was traced like a criminal by his father-in-law. And everybody knows that, in Yiddish we call a father-in-law. Anyone know what your father-in-law is called in Yiddish? Shver. Your shver. You know what shver means in Yiddish? Trouble. What's that? Trouble. My trouble. Like a shver taisvis. It's shver. It's very difficult. Your father-in-law, that's why Yiddish is the language of the soul. Your father-in-law is called your difficulty. He's my shver. And you can call your shver that. He's your shver. When I talk to my shver, I say, oh, my shver. So they know that part of being a shver is your shver. You make difficulties for your son-in-law, By the way, I've got an amazing shver. I love my shver. He's amazing. But he's still called the shver. He's the shver. That's the way we talk. He's the shver. So David HaMelech's shver was, even if you tell me that you got a very shver, David HaMelech's shver was, he was trying to kill him. That's another level. So his shver was mamish. It was a criminal. He was trying to be killed by his father-in-law, Shaul, who was also the king at that time. There's a mutiny in his house, a son that wants to kill you. And you think King David is running around complaining and whining. The only thing he does is he just davens to Hashem. Hashem, you're with me. I feel that you're not with me, but now I feel that you're with me. Everything is, let me talk to you, Hashem. He did nothing else. As he's being chased as a criminal, people trying to kill him, invalid, challenges, difficulties. He was red hair, so we would call him a shayfach dam. Oh, you kill people, I'm sure. You kill all that blood on your hands. David HaMelech, all he would do was make time for Klal Yisrael. He would sing to Hashem. Everyone knows the famous Gemara. We're going to talk about this more. He'd wake up in the middle of the night because he had a harp on the wall, and the winds would come and blow the harp, and the strings of the harp would start to play music, and he would wake up. Sounds nice, right? I'm sure you can get an app on your phone. King David's harp alarm clock. But he would hear that harp, and it would wake him up. And you know what he would do the rest of the night? Sing Tehillim, learn Torah. And the rest of the day he spent answering the Jewish people's questions. What do you need? I'm here for you. He was the king of Israel. It says that he spent most of the day looking at sheets, bed sheets that had blood on them, because part of Jewish law is that there's laws of family purity, and that's something that needs a lot more discussion, not something that a person could say, well, I saw on a video about blood on a sheet, and that seems so primitive. That needs to sit down to talk things out about what those really mean. Some of the most beautiful, profound ideas and laws of deep relationship comes from these parts of Torah. It has to be spoken about more. But King David spent most of his days looking at these bloodstains to determine if they were one that would make a husband and wife not able to be intimate, or they were able to stay intimate together. And a good sage will do anything possible to keep a husband and wife together. King David would do anything. That's why he would spend all his time looking at these stains to keep a husband and wife together. Spend all his time just keeping husbands and wives together, helping Klal Yisrael, getting money for people that needed money. He was involved with the people. He would go out to war, and you know what he was? In an elephant in the back? No! Acharai. He was always first. The king of Israel fights first. He goes in first with a sword and a shield. You know what it had on his shield? You guys ever seen those Sephardi Sidurim with the menorah? La Menatzeach. Right? You know the menorah? The Tehillim and the Shem and the menorah. So he had that on his shield. And as he was going into battle, he would look at that. There's two gears. Either he had that on his shield, a golden shield, gold, or he had a giant bling, a menorah that he kept around his neck. And as he was going into battle, he was reading that psalm in the shape of the menorah as it was blazing on fire, and to go into battle and win all the battles. First. He went in first. That's what King David's doing. He's writing poetry, and he's singing to Hashem. No matter all the challenge he was facing, it wasn't about him. It was about Klal Yisrael. It was about God. It was about God. It was about how can I bring Hashem to this world. He did everything possible just to build this Beis HaMikdash. And his seed, Moshiach, Mamish, Ben David, is going to build it. He's going to build the third temple. It's coming very soon. We should be zayich to this. Amen ve'amen.